As people rushed through the airport, Pacific Airlines Flight 739, which was going from San Francisco to New York, was getting ready to take off. In the middle of all the chaos, a blonde girl holding onto her father's hand stood out in her pale blue outfit. Her father, a man with a serious face, seemed cold and unapproachable as he scribbled quickly on his phone. Johnson, the tall and friendly flight attendant, was rushing to get the plane ready to take off. He was known for being calm and polite even when he was under a lot of stress. And as he went down the aisles, he saw a girl and her father settling into their seats. When the girl looked at him, her big eyes showed a mix of interest and maybe a cry for help. As soon as everyone got comfortable, the carriage was filled with soft laughter and whispers. Johnson smiled at her and turned to leave, but an uneasy feeling stayed dormant. Johnson couldn't get rid of the image of the girl who was fidgeting as the plane touched down on the runway. Even though he had seen other children on his travels, there was something about her that interested and scared him. Once the plane took off and was level in the sky, Johnson decided to keep a close eye on row 12. The flight attendant had no idea that what looked like a simple flight turned out to be something much more difficult and unexpected that would change his life. Johnson gave travelers drinks and snacks on his first trip around the rows. As he got closer to row 12, he couldn't help but notice that the girl was getting more and more upset. Her wide eyes seemed to be fixed on something, and her father was still talking on the phone. Not noticing that his daughter was upset, the girl seized the chance to strike up a conversation with Johnson when he gave her a drink. "Sir, would you allow me to speak with you?" she asked, with a quiet, eager voice as she delicately tugged on his uniform sleeve. Gently smiling, Johnson knelt down to her level. "Sure thing. Please tell me how I may be of service to you now." Before answering, the girl shot her father an anxious glance. "I am terrified," she mumbled under her breath, her expression betraying her emotions. Just as Johnson was about to reply, the father glanced up, his expression icy as he took note of the encounter. His kid was yanked back to her seat by him. His voice was calm and collected as he warned TC not to annoy the flight attendant. Johnson was still worried even after he stepped back and nodded. He kept going on his rounds while keeping a close eye on row 12. Without a doubt, something was wrong. He went back to his place and watched in secret, wanting to understand what was going on better. Not long after that, Johnson saw Tacy doing something strange. Her father would never see the delicate and careful moves she was making with her hands. Johnson tried to understand her, but he couldn't. He decided to get help because he was worried. Johnson contacted Sarah, one of his teammates, from the galley. He continued, "Sarah, I need your opinion on something." And then he explained the problem to her. Sarah frowned and grumbled. "Maybe she needs to say something important to you. Find out what it is without making her father suspicious." Johnson made his way back to the aisle, influenced by what Sarah said. The urgency and intensity of TC's signals increased, and he could see she was getting frantic. Johnson was aware that he had to move swiftly but carefully. Before it was too late, he needed to understand the girl's message. Johnson wanted to help TC, so he came up with a clever plan. He went back to row 12 and pretended to take drink orders while carrying a notepad and pen. As soon as he got close to the girl, he quickly wrote a note that said, "Are you in danger?" He gave the note to TC. The girl read the message, then looked over at Johnson and gave him a small nod of agreement. Johnson felt a chill go down his back. He needed to learn more. As he walked down the aisle, he kept an eye on what was going on above him. TC started to talk again with her hands, but this time she was clearer. It dawned on Johnson that she was drawing letters in the air. After a lot of mental work, he finally made out the word help, which made his worst fears even worse. Time was of the essence, and Johnson understood it. Returning to the galley, he requested Sarah to step in and cover for him for a short while. After that, he slipped into the adjacent bathroom and patiently waited for TC to disengage herself from her seat without drawing her father's scrutiny. Johnson was waiting for the girl in the restroom after she escaped a few minutes later. Finally, she broke her silence, trapped in that cramped room. "Something awful happened with my dad. I beg you, I do not want to accompany him." "I'm terrified," she admitted. By assuring her of her safety, Johnson calmed her fears. "A little more information would help me assist you, Tessie." He inquired, "What did he do exactly?" while maintaining a composed tone. Telling him in a whisper, "He took me without my mom's permission." Tessie's eyes filled with sadness. "He told me I would never see her again and that we were moving. Please don't make me go with him." Johnson was filled with worry. Because of how bad things were, he had to do something. That he would keep TC close and do anything to keep her safe that he promised. When Johnson got back to the cabin, he told the pilot what had happened. When Johnson got there, the pilot quickly told the right people what had happened. The cops were already waiting for them at the curb when they got to the airport. Johnson kept a close eye on the girl the whole time. and she went back to her place right away. As new clues about the mystery were found, the stress on the plane kept rising. Johnson watched row 12 with great attention as the plane continued its ride. He had to guarantee TC's safety right up until the plane landed. It appeared as though her dad, who was utterly engrossed in his phone, had no idea what was going on. In an effort to maintain his composure, Johnson pretended to be engrossed in writing on his notepad. Immediately, he began to design a plan to relay to the flight attendants, detailing things like secretly monitoring row 12 and the child. As time went on, the tension increased. The trip went on, and Johnson knew that he could put TC in even more danger if he made a mistake. A great responsibility rested on his shoulders, but he was hell-bent on succeeding. The plane faced turbulence midway during the voyage, which was not anticipated. The plane was shaking, and people clung to their seats. TC looked at Johnson with fear in her eyes. A soft smile helped her feel better and calmed her down. Johnson saw that TC's dad had been watching her with a high level of suspicion as the storm passed. It was like he knew something was wrong. The father might start to think something was wrong, so Johnson knew he had to move quickly. He told Sarah in a low voice, "We need to keep things calm." He was moving over in silence. As time goes on, the father starts to doubt her more and more. Sarah nodded and started talking to other people on the plane to draw attention away from any behavior that might be strange. Johnson went back to row 12 and got TC a glass of juice right away. "This will help you feel better," he told her as he gave her the cup. His smile got bigger. TC smiled and took a sip of the juice to thank the person who gave it to her. Johnson felt a momentary relief as he confidently strolled away. He was fully cognizant of the fact that a backup plan had to be prepared. He approached the cockpit and carefully warned the pilot that they had to leave fast and quietly since the cops were there. The hours that followed were tense. As if nothing out of the ordinary were happening, Johnson and the crew worked in perfect harmony to safeguard Tessie. The plan was in motion, even if it felt like it had taken forever. Even though danger was on the horizon, Johnson held on to the hope that all will turn out okay in the end. Johnson could sense Tessie's growing anxiety as the plane drew nearer to its destination. While he continued to be absorbed in his phone, her dad would occasionally give her a dubious glance. The clock was obviously ticking, and Johnson knew it. Caution was required of him. Picking up where they left off, he went up to Sarah, who was delivering coffee to the plane's back passengers. "Sarah, we need to figure out a way to get Tessie out of her dad's hands the moment we land. When the police show up, we will be prepared." Johnson made it clear that they needed to act immediately. "We can utilize the disembarkation as a diversion," Sarah suggested following some deliberation. "A technical problem has developed, and I'm about to announce that everyone has to leave right this second. If we can divide the crowd, we might be able to rescue TC from his clutches." Johnson agreed after seeing how well the plan worked. When he went back to the hall, he paid close attention to row 12. While the plane was going down, he quietly got TC ready. "Tessie, we have to get out of here fast when we land, all right? Your safety is my first priority." TC nodded with a mix of nervousness and optimism on her face. Johnson returned to his position, eagerly anticipating the start of the landing. Johnson experienced a heave of relief, followed by a surge of excitement the moment the plane touched down. The story was beginning to take shape. People began to move toward the exit at a quicker pace than usual after Sarah broke the news. With a strong grip on her hand, Tessie's father rose to his feet. "Excuse me, sir. May I assist you in disembarking your daughter?" In his haste to catch up to the man, Johnson questioned. Many people were confused when the father finally agreed to take the help. As his heart beat fast, Johnson grabbed Tessie's hand and led her to the front of the plane. He thought that every second was important. There was a group of undercover police waiting for them outside the airport. They were dressed as airport workers. Johnson gave Tessie to a police officer and went back to her mother as her father began to understand how serious the situation was. His voice betraying his mistrust, the father questioned, "What are you doing?" "We are making sure everyone is safe, sir," Johnson said while maintaining his composure. "Kindly come with me." In a flash, the cops had Tessie's dad in custody and were recounting what had happened while Johnson escaped with the girl. Still frightened but pleased to be free of her father, Tessie gazed at him. As he witnessed Tessie being transported to a secure location, Johnson had a surge of relief. Even though he had overcome the most difficult aspect, there was still a lot to sort out. Everything had altered when the truth about Tessie's father's intentions was revealed. After ensuring Tessie's safety, it was time to bring justice. As they were escorted to the terminal, the passengers' disembarkation became more orderly. Undercover cops led Tessie's father to a safe place, and Johnson watched them intently. In an angry outcry, the father said, "You can't do this," as he attempted to escape from their clutches. As soon as Tessie heard her dad's words, she moved toward Johnson, who was watching. Johnson tried to calm things down by saying, "Sir, please be cool. The authorities will clear everything up. The problem was that Dad wouldn't move. He fought off one of the police officers and charged at Tacy with a furious look on his face. As people in the area became more scared, they began to move away. Without hesitation, Johnson stood between the girl's father and herself. "Put an end to it!" "Please don't make this situation worse," he commanded. His fury appeared out of control, yet the father halted for a brief second. He moved forward to shove Johnson aside, but the cops swiftly tackled him on the ground and put him in handcuffs. He shouted, "This is a mistake! She's my daughter!" Johnson fell to his knees by Tacy's side as she sobbed quietly as her father was removed. "Now you're safe." With a soothing tone, he assured her that everything would be all right. A mix of gratitude and dread flooded Tacy's eyes as she gazed at him. She wanted Johnson's comforting embrace more than anything. He foresaw the emotional storm she was about to endure and the irrevocable shift in her life's trajectory. As a result, the cops went back to speak with Johnson. "I appreciate all the assistance you've given me," Johnson said. "Tacy is in our care and we will make sure she is safe." An officer warned that a statement regarding the flight's events might be necessary. A nod from Johnson indicated agreement. "Whatever is required of me, I will fulfill." Johnson experienced a combination of relief and fatigue as the cops escorted Tacy to a secure location. He was confident that he had made the correct decision, despite the acute and deadly nature of the circumstance. Knowing there was more to be done to guarantee Tacy's safety and justice, he watched as the police took her away. Despite its intensity, the confrontation had been the most satisfying moment of his career. Police summoned Johnson just as he was about to exit the restricted area. "Could you kindly accompany us, sir? We require additional information," the officer stated in a courteous but forceful manner. Johnson agreed, and he was ushered into the room where Tessie and the social worker were sitting. The girl seemed more at ease, but she still showed signs of being tired and anxious. Smith was told by the social worker to sit down. "Tessie has given us some of the story, but the social worker wanted to hear your side of things too." Johnson started to describe what happened during the journey as soon as he saw Tessie's unusual conduct all the way to the argument with her father. He detailed the girl's distress signs and the measures he and the crew would take to protect her. Holding the social worker's hand, Tessie found solace as he spoke. The social worker would interject with more targeted inquiries every so often, as the police meticulously recorded the conversation. According to the social worker, "Did you notice any other suspicious or dangerous behavior from the father during the flight?" Johnson paused to consider. He looked entirely oblivious to his daughter, engrossed in his phone. It was terrifying, though, the expression on his face as he realized we were talking. He appeared more agitated than worried. Following Johnson's assistance, the officer thanked him and completed his notes. Tessie gently beckoned to him as he rose to depart. A surge of emotion washed over Johnson as he smiled at her. "Tessie, you showed fantastic courage. At this point, everything will be okay." As Johnson left the room, he felt like the situation was getting lighter. But just as he thought everything was fine, an alarm went off. People started running away and yelling at the terminal, which looked like a scene of fear. He spoke to one of the security officers and inquired, "What's happening?" There was an attempt to flee. Tessie's father made an attempt to avoid being taken into jail, the guard, who appeared genuinely worried, replied. Johnson could feel his pulse quicken. Returning to the room where Tessie was, he sprinted. The girl was with the social worker and 2 officers when he arrived, so he knew she was safe. But her dad was completely absent. Johnson, who was attempting to maintain composure, stated he must not be near her again. In spite of the chaos, the police promptly organized a search of the terminal. Tessie's father was discovered concealed in a prohibited zone, following an intense and frenzied investigation. On this occasion, he was subjected to enhanced security measures. Johnson went back to the room after capturing and removing Tessie's father. Tessie hurried over to embrace him, her relief palpable. Knowing she was safe brought him a mix of relief and happiness, and he returned the hug. Johnson felt better knowing Tessie was no longer in danger because the dire scenario had been settled. The world would still turn out okay despite everything. He went back to the room and saw that Tessie had been joined by a team of experts, including child psychologists and social workers. "Tessie, you're safe now," reassured the social worker with a charming smile. "We'll take care of you and make sure everything is all right." Tessie continued to grip Johnson's hand while she gazed at him. There was an unspoken bond between them, a shared comprehension of their shared experiences. A gentle yet heartfelt, "Johnson, thank you for everything," escaped her lips. Johnson smiled as he lowered to her level. "You were very brave. Always keep that in mind." As Tessie was escorted away, Johnson experienced a mix of contentment and fatigue. It was clear to him that he had spared no effort in his mission to keep that girl safe. Officers approached him as he watched the group walk away with Tessie. "You were really effective today, Johnson. If you hadn't noticed the signs, I don't know what would have happened," the officer continued. "I simply did what anyone would do," Johnson modestly responded. Afterwards, Johnson observed a distraught woman hurrying toward him in the terminal. It was the mother of Tessie. She sprinted over to her kid and embraced her firmly the moment she spotted her. "Tessie, my God, are you okay?" Her voice quivered with anguish as she spoke. Tears of delight and relief welled up in Tessie's eyes as she hugged her mother. "Mom, I'm fine." Johnson lent me a hand. As she gazed at Johnson, the mother's gratitude knew no bounds. "Thank you for saving my daughter," she cried out. Johnson felt moved, so he nodded. "She is an exceptional young lady. I'm happy I was of service." Johnson felt incredibly fulfilled that he helped the mother and daughter get back together. He knew Tessie was being cared for and that the problem had been solved. Johnson could feel the stress of the day leaving him as he walked to the exit of the airport. He took a deep breath, thought about what had happened, and then looked up at the night sky full of stars. His life had been changed by the bravery and determination of a little girl and the speed with which a flight attendant acted, even though she had to face danger and hardship. Johnson thought he could make a difference and give hope to those who needed it the most, even when things were very bad. He took that belief with him when he left the airport. If you enjoyed this story, please like and share. Subscribe if you haven't, and hit the bell notification button to get notified when I post the next story. Until next time, bye.